Hey everyone, welcome to Strange Stories, where we explore near-death experiences and supernatural stories from people who've had a glimpse of the other side. If you enjoy our content, please consider liking the video and subscribing to our channel. Without further ado, let's get to the story of the day. Many people lose a kid for various reasons, and the entire community, family and friends are always concerned. Many people feel compelled to read about what helped others in their grief. Following a life-threatening accident in the ICU, I had a near-death encounter with my dying child who was in another hospital at a children's ICU and who was dying like me and was clinically dead after more than an hour, all without my knowledge. This encounter radically altered my worldview and flipped the balance of my inner convictions upside down. I was presented with things that, until that point, I had never understood or thought to be essential. My departed kid was my greatest aid in my profound sorrow during this near-death experience, when she was able to let go after I comprehended her most essential lessons, as she had accomplished the most important goal in her life of repairing things before her death. I realized she could only depart freely if she had told me everything I needed to know to deal with this unforeseen, horrible scenario in order for me to fully accept and grasp everything. At the same time, I had given my dying child her greatest delight and relieved her greatest load, and I had received the greatest gift via this interaction with my dying child and the perspective I gained through this encounter. The greatest gift is the certainty that many things are not as they appear, and that we frequently regard significant things as minor and unimportant things as very important. That it is not irrelevant how we spend our own lifetime, nor how the balance of our life manifests itself. On the contrary, every human being's life balance is the most vital thing, and it quickly became the most significant standard for me. It makes no difference if we have made our peace when we die. Quite the contrary. Getting my life balance in order has been my top priority since then, and it has drastically improved my life. And it provided me with the assurance that my deceased kid, and we all, are safe and loved even in our darkest hours, which we are often unaware of. And her death can never take away our thankfulness for her existence, even though it was brief. I was in the intensive care unit, or ICU, at the time of my near-death experience, and I was bleeding inside and dying. A second emergency surgery performed soon after my NDE literally saved my life. I was in an accident with my daughter. She was clinically dead and had to be resuscitated before being moved to another hospital about an hour away and placed in a children's intensive care unit. Unfortunately, she was in even worse shape than I was. She had no vital signs other than a heartbeat, no brain waves, and no ability to breathe on her own. My spouse did not seek first aid or dial 911 after our collision, but instead drove away in his car. I was forced to cope with the matter alone, so I wondered if my daughter had any hope of living a normal life because nobody told me how bad her situation actually was in order to spare me extra stress after the life-saving operation. I was in a state of mental anguish and was continuously blaming my husband for our daughter's prolonged hospitalization. Internally, I was consumed by unexpressed fury, mute accusations, and tremendous hatred for my lot in general, God, and especially my husband. In this situation, I had a near-death experience that catapulted me into another realm that I later named Infinity. I had an out-of-time experience. My daughter initiated a psychic discussion with me, encouraging me to forgive him. This didn't make sense to me. In the telepathic conversation that I later typed down word for word, I told her that I thought his attitude was unforgivable. She told me everything I needed to know to open up my closed-minded perspective of pride and self-righteousness, and I could intellectually comprehend that forgiveness was preferable. She said that she too could forgive, but that it was a lifelong process for her. At this point, I assumed she was discussing a physical and mental handicap rather than her own mortality. It was only later that I realized what she was trying to tell me. She was at peace with her impending death. I was given a kind of evaluation on the outcome of our lives. I was shown a massive scale resembling an older pharmaceutical scale, and I was told that my spouse and I would be rated in the same manner. I was shown our best internal abilities and attributes, as well as the actual outcome at this moment, as a life balance. I was broken, as was my internal state of mind, full of fury, hatred, and rage. The worst concerns about my daughter's condition, furious internal accusations against my husband, even though he didn't cause the accident and the outcome of the life balance was anything but flattering. I felt really terrible, quite humiliated by my reactions to the event, and I deeply regretted not listening to my daughter and not forgiving my husband. I felt a tremendous sense of remorse because, looking back in this location where I couldn't change anything, I felt a deep grief for this limited outcome. I felt a lot of sympathy for myself and also for my husband, and I felt an enormous love overwhelming everything at the same time with the other sentiments, and the strongest was my need for pardon of my own flaws, which almost shattered my heart. When I was thinking, now I understand everything, I found myself on top of my favorite mountaintop, 2,000 meters above sea level and only a few meters from the crest. Immediately in front of me was a modest wooden fence intended for animal grazing, with a narrow opening for hikers. Everything was very realistic. It was around 5 a.m. and the weather was appropriate for the hour. It was foggy and windy. My hair was blown in my face several times. Suddenly, a massive black boulder appeared in the center of the path. At least 2 meters tall and wide, with plenty of spiky and sharp edges. I attempted to avoid it, but it was impossible. A straight rock face was on the left, while a perilously high grade was on the right. For the first time, I realized that my life was in danger. This black rock has the potential to crush me. There was no escape. I forgive him, I suddenly heard myself say, and the dark rock began to roll down towards the abyss. When I tried to continue my journey, I was abruptly thrown back into the hospital and was in tears. I felt liberated, blessed, and forgiven for everything I had previously considered a flaw in my life. I was at peace with my lot, with God, and with the world. I was confident that I had had a good experience. I sent an SMS to my husband, apologizing for accusing him in my thoughts and assuring him that everything would be great, that our kid would most likely be crippled, but that she would be able to deal with it all. A few minutes later, I felt a strong heartbeat and realized my daughter was in trouble. I was stunned since I had been so certain that everything would be okay. I requested a Bible and began reading the psalm for her birthday. Lord, hear me at the hour when I call you, it said at the end. I knew it was her last moments. I summoned the nurse to phone the other hospital, but she was obviously not permitted to do so. When the female doctor arrived an hour later, she informed me that my daughter died at the precise time I was reading the psalm. I'm now convinced that my daughter returned from the infinity of her free will, resuscitated, to give us more time to reach me and cure everything before departing for good. In actuality, my tiny girl was head and shoulders above me in terms of accepting and forgiving her lot, and even though she was at risk of death, she helped me gain critical insights and find peace. She could let go and leave in peace once she knew everything had been straightened up. I am eternally grateful for her quick thinking and immense assistance and support in a life-threatening circumstance. I've decided to dedicate the rest of my life to her.